What is up, my friends? Toby Wayne from Toby Wayne Studios. Today, I am going to do I think I'm going to do a plaque, not so much a magnet. I think I was just going to paint up this skull here, and I think I'm going to do like a red skull variant, and I'll just mount it onto this little plaque, of course, and then I'll get that available on TobyWayneStudios.com. But I thought I would just record this whole fiasco, if you will. So let me go ahead and just put my phone on silent here so we're not interrupted. So basically the things that we're going to need today obviously are the plaque, and I think I got this at Hobby Lobby. You can get like a pack of 4 of them for like $2. It's a pretty good deal. And then of course I'm going to need, my casting. I have chose the skull today, but of course there's always other ones. I've got a dummy and a Nosferatu and a bunch of other ones, but I chose the red one today or the skull, because I wanted to do a red skull variant. And I'm also going to need a couple of different reds. I think I'm going to do maroon for I guess the shadows. I was going to say highlights, but I think I'm going to do the shadows because it is a little bit darker. So I'm going to start with a lighter red for the base, which I think I'm going to go with this red here because it's a pretty decent red, and there's enough of a contrast between the two. And also when it comes time, I'm going to do the teeth. I'm going to do more of a yellow. I was looking at some of the just red skulls in general, and the yellow pops more than the white. So, and you'll have to excuse me, I've got a nose itch here because I was sanding this down, and now I've got sawdust or shavings everywhere. So yeah, I should have wore a face mask, but I live life on the edge, people. I live life on the edge. So anyway, let's jump into this, and then I also have my water here that I'm gonna clean my brushes with, and yeah. So we're just gonna get right into this. Hope everybody's day is going good. Today is Sunday, so I'm taking a day to just create. Every day should be a day to create. I think that's what Mr. Rogers or Bob Ross or somebody would say. And I'm also saying it. So get out there and be creative every day. So I'm just going to give this a good coat here of this red. And I may end up doing just some straight up black. I know I don't normally like to do that, just simply because I feel it's so strong of a contrast between the two. I do like a little bit of subtlety, but I don't know. I may end up just doing like almost like a burnt look to it. I'm not sure yet. We're gonna see how this video goes. There, and as you notice, the skull was black when I started, and it was of course been primed to allow the paint to adhere to the resin. That's always an important step. I have seen other guys paint without the primer, and I've purchased some stuff that has been primed or painted without it being primed, and the paint is rubbing off. So that's just something I like to do to make sure there's an extra step to make sure that the paints will adhere. And then of course I also seal my sculpts with Krylon matte finish, and I lay a pretty good layer of Krylon finish on there to seal it. Okay, so there's our first layer, and now I'm just going to go back because you can see some dark spots of the primer underneath, which it might work if I didn't do that, because I will be doing multi-layers, but I think I'm going to just go ahead and give us a good second coat just to make sure that there's good paint durability on this in case it does get handled quite a bit, which it'll be on the plaque, so I'm not really sure why people would be touching the sculpt itself, but hey, people are a curious lot, you know what I mean? So they're gonna explore and see what this is made of. Halloween is quickly approaching us, sneaking up on us. Not sure how many days left. 10 days maybe? I don't know. But hope everybody has a good, safe Halloween this year. Hope everybody's got some good costumes and some good plans for their Halloween. I think I may end up working the Nightmare Factory in Salem. I'm not sure yet. I'm not even sure what day Halloween falls on. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. If it's a weekday, I think it's a Monday this year. I think I saw. I could be wrong. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and dry this real quick. Okay, there's just a tiny little spot right there. And I'm not sure if you can see this or not, and I will do kind of a little bit of a fill in here, but there's a spot like right there. There's that little black spot, and that's just a little miscast. So, and when I say miscast, I mean that's just like a bubble where the resin didn't flow in and capture that little spot. So I'm going to go ahead and just use, it's small enough that I can just go ahead and use my paintbrush here with a dab of my paint and just kind of fill that in. And the paint will act as a filler. So that's nice that this paint is thick enough that I can do that. Okay. So here's what I have so far. There you can see there's a couple little wet spots still of the paint, and I want to make sure that I get this completely dry before I start adding the next layers on, because if it's still wet and then I go to apply paint over the top of that, of course it'll want to smear, so it may end up causing a problem with the either the paint adaptation and or the colors. It'll start blending the colors, and that's not what I want at this point. So always make sure your paint layers are dry, before you go to the next one. So just my experience. So I thought I'd share that along with you. So now I'm going to go with this maroon. And I'm going to go ahead and just dump a little bit on there. And it is, I don't know if you can see the differences between these two or not. One is obviously this is much lighter than this one, but it's still pretty darn close. So we're just gonna test it out here a little bit and see. I could add a little bit of dark, maybe some black to it to kind of help darken it up a touch, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see how this looks. Oh, and I also have my paintbrush, or my excuse me, my sponge. And this was used on another project, but it's got this nice ripped texture here. So I'm gonna use that as my kind of my stipple sponge to help blend things a little bit. So here you see I've added just a little bit of water down into the shadows and recesses here. And this is gonna kind of help to blend, deepen those recessed areas. And like I say, we won't really notice a difference until it starts to dry, because right now it's pretty pretty wet looking, and it won't have it'll all kind of blend as one color. So we'll just let this dry and see if it makes a difference. Okay, good. Yeah, it did make a difference. You can barely pick it up. You can see where it is a different color. So that's a good thing because the multi-layers, the more I add to this, the darker that's going to get. So we're gonna go ahead and proceed with this color, and I'm gonna just keep layering them into this section here to darken them up. And as usual, the camera lens here is having a hard time distinguishing the two. But once I get it actually put on YouTube and stuff, it'll actually look like it's looking like it's supposed to. So I need to quit fretting over that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just go inside here, inside the nostrils. And maybe I'm going to hit in the teeth area, which again, I said I'm going to go over those with the yellow, but it's always nice to kind of darken around the areas here that you want to be darkened. I might add a little bit here. And in some of these little recesses. And I'm going to come up underneath there. Let's see, what else do I want to do? And I'll go back over that. Okay. It's amazing how just the two reds, even though they look so similar, you can once you get them out on the tin foil and then you start applying them to your actual piece that you're painting, just how much they pop against each other. So that's pretty awesome, and it's one of those artistic things that you have to just kind of trust as it goes along. Okay, I'm going to keep adding a little bit of this to these recessed areas, and I'm just going to do this several more times. I'm going to just kind of get my depth established, and I'm going to do that maybe 3 or 4 more times. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over the whole piece with that same color to kind of blend and stipple in the areas that I want to be recessed, and it'll tie it all together with the stippling. So, and I tell you, I've actually become quite a fan of uh, using the makeup brush. It's just, you would think you wouldn't get that much control with something like this just due to the fact that it's a material that gives, and also the sponge has this unique texture to it, but it's pretty amazing. I've really grown to enjoy this. And then, of course, I tear the edges and break off the hard lines. That way you don't get creases, the solid straight lines when I am stippling. You know, when you apply it like this, you can kind of rotate it, and those high points will actually mark. So it's kind of nice. I have really grown to enjoy the makeup sponge technique. In fact, I do a lot of my modeled skin using that technique. Some guys will use an airbrush, which is awesome, and then some guys will use just straight up makeup sponge, such as myself. As long as you get the achieved look, then that's doesn't matter what you use. Use a Q-tip. Use the end of a pencil. You know, the eraser. Whatever works best for you. That's what's important. That you're one, being creative, and two, getting the achieved results that you're wanting. Let's go ahead and blast this here real quick. The one thing I noticed is if you look inside that eye socket, you can see the shine in there. Such a deep recessed area that the paints and stuff are having a hard time drying that deep in there, because the blow dryer must not be reaching that far in. So I'm going to have to be really careful when it comes time to go and apply more paints in that area, because it's not wanting to dry all the way. So again, I'm just going to go in and hit certain sockets, certain areas here inside the lines, like that little socket, that line right there. I'm not sure what I should call that. And I'm just going to be achieving the depth. And you know what I think I am going to do, just for fun and just to show y'all how this works, I'm going to take just the teeny tiniest bit of black, and I'm going to put it right there. And now I'm going to darken this paint with this. So, I mean, and black goes a long way, so you have to be really careful. Like, I got just the tiniest little bit on my brush, and you can see how it's going to very quickly darken this. And like I said, a little bit goes a long ways. So take it easy with the blacks. That will definitely show up in your paints. Subtlety, I guess, would be the key word here. Now I'm gonna just kind of start to stipple all around this piece here, and it's gonna darken the whole piece overall. You can, I don't know if you can pick up on it or not. I don't know if you can or not, but in fact, I'm just gonna add little tiny splotches, and then I'm gonna use my brush. So it's gonna give us kind of that mottled skin look that we're trying to achieve. Even though it's a skull, we're going to give it that look. That's the trouble with when you're going painting all over the skull, you're or the subject, just in general. You have to kind of work your way around and be careful in how you handle it, so you don't touch an area that's already been painted and then you get a big old thumbprint across there. Okay, so you can, I'm hoping that you can see, but there's a little bit of darkness starting there. There's a little bit right in there. And then of course I'm going around underneath the sockets, and I'm going to go ahead and add just a tiny bit more of this. Okay, so now see how that really darkened it up. That may almost be a little too dark, so I'm just going to gently add a little bit more red to kind of balance that out. But you can totally see the difference now between this color and that color and that color. So let's see what we can do here with this. If I can get us in frame, that would be nice. And if my massive cranium skull doesn't knock the whole camera over. Anyway. And again, like most of my sculptures and paint jobs on these things, it's all about layering. I might put, 10 to 20 different layers of paints on these things to achieve the desired look. So it's kind of time consuming, but at the same time, it pays off in the end. I think layers and depth are important in a paint job, and whether it's through makeup sponges or airbrushing or however it is that you're doing, whatever medium or whatever style that you're using to paint, as long as you're getting good depth in your sculpts through the paints, then it's a success. So I'm just gonna kind of start to tie some of these things together through the stippling. Okay. And that eye socket there is still really wet, so I'm going to go ahead and just avoid that. And I'm just going to come back in and hit all these little areas here that I'm trying to accentuate. Oops. Okay. So now that I've achieved that depth with a little bit more of the color, the darker colors, now I'm going to come back in and I'm going to darken back up this color even more. And you can see now that it's really dark. And this is going to, it's almost like a cherry red, like a dark cherry color. And I think this is going to come into play as well in helping to establish that depth. For some reason, I've gotten too much liquid in there, so I'm just going to touch it with the tip of my brush. If you get too much liquid settling inside your inside a recessed area, you can always take your brush and make sure it's dried off pretty good, and then you can just go in and touch it, and it'll actually absorb all of that paint, and then you can just wipe it off. So that helps with making sure that you don't have puddles, because the puddles will actually want to get up underneath the established paint, and then it'll lift it up and peel. So that's if you're not careful. So just through the layers of the depth, you can see these areas have gotten darker. There's some darkness there, and there. So now I've got my super dark stuff, and I'm going to just kind of come back in and really accentuate those areas. Notice how I'm not having to change out my sponge at all. Because it is just a wash, it's enabling it to absorb in, and I don't have to worry too much about moisture. So if it was straight paints, then I might be more apt to just go ahead and pull that out of there and swap it out, but I'm not going to do that. So again, I'm going to hit up inside all my recessed areas in the eye sockets. I'm going to go ahead and keep focused on these areas here, just going over them ever so subtly. And I think I want to keep hitting some of these areas, kind of break up that red. Go over those teeth again, because that's going to actually help me out with my establishing shadows and depth in those teeth area. Technically, I could just leave them as it is, but I want to have some dark yellow on there to help it pop. So. Okay, so we're getting there. I think I'm just going to go ahead and do one more layer just for fun, just to establish those areas. And then we'll jump on to the next section, which will be the yellow for the teeth. And I think I'm kind of neglecting the bottom, so I'm just going to kind of put in a couple little dabs, and I'm just going to break up that color scheme down there. And I think I'm going to circle around the eyes, around the sockets. And I'm going I hit up a couple little more dabs up in here. And also, just to tie things in a little bit, I'm going to add a little bit of water here. And I'm going to just kind of hit the high points of the sculpt, just to tie all of it together. And I'm feeling that this might be just a touch hard. There's a hard line there, so I'm going to soften this up a touch. All right, let's get down to the teeth. And I'm going to just put a little dab there. And even using the same water that has a little bit of a red tint to it, because I'll come back in and dirty those up. I'm just getting a little bit of the yellow on there, and I can come back in and I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights. And I may end up just doing just a straight yellow wash, so it does differentiate the reds from the yellow, but yet it's not so overpowering. Okay. Let's go ahead and dry this really quick, just to kind of see what it's going to look like when it's dry. A lot of the times you think it's really too much paint, and then you dry it, and then you realize, oh wow, it's barely coming through, which you'll see here in a second, because I noticed that it's subtle. It's very subtle, but it's still there. But I don't think it's quite bright enough yet. You see what I mean? How it looks, it's there, but it's not. So we're going to go ahead and just do this again. And I guess I could have done a dry brush technique as well. And again, I may go over these one more time after I dry this. But yeah, if I do the dry brushing, then it'll be more paint, less water, of course, and then you'll just drag that brush across the highlights, and it'll hit those highlights and highlight them. I know, real technical, right? Okay, getting closer, getting a little better. So I'm going to do it one last time, and then that's it. That's it. I'm not going to do it again. And I'm kind of just actually hitting the incisal edges of these teeth. Yeah, those are happy teeth. And I don't think I'm going to use gloss. I think I'm just going to hit it with a matte finish and seal it pretty heavy with matte finish just to make sure that it's sealed so those teeth aren't going to have a heavy gloss to them. Yeah. So, yeah, the only thing that's left here is to paint the base and adhere this sucker onto the plaque. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up because that's pretty much all that's left. I'm just gonna put a basic black paint job on this, and I'm gonna matte seal this, and yeah, and I'll glue them on there, and he'll come with a little display plastic easel, yeah, and that way you can set it on your desk or next to your bedstand if that's what you're into. But anyway, thank you guys so much for checking this video out. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate the new subscribers to the channel. I've seen I've gained quite a few, so thank you so much for that. You can also check out my Instagram, Toby Wayne Studios on Instagram. So anyway, thank you guys so much for checking this video out. I appreciate you, and I will catch you in the very next video.